Okay, hi guys, and welcome to the show. And of course, I'll do my wristwatch check. A little bit unnecessary. I am actually wearing the watch that I'm going to be reviewing today. This is the TAG Heuer F1 GMT, and this was a gift from a friend and supporter viewer of the show. Those of you who've been following would have seen the unboxing. This is my first TAG Heuer, and it's a really interesting watch because it's made me look at a brand that I've got to be honest, I kind of dismissed, and it's so silly. I played into that typical snobbery that is just so prevalent in, thank you NYPD, thank you. I don't live in a high crime area, it's just, this is the sound of New York. Thank you very much, thank you. Okay, we'll carry on. This is a very interesting watch to review. I was going to wait for a few weeks to get a better kind of judgment of it, but actually I think all my kind of feelings and thoughts and observations of the watch have kind of already formulated. So I'm going to be doing the review today, and off the bat I'll say there are a lot of positives and there are a few negatives, and I think that lends for a more interesting review. So without further ado, let's roll the intro and get into this watch. Now, those of you who've been following the show would undoubtedly know that this was a gift from a dear friend of mine and viewer, supporter of the show. Big shout out to VN out there if you're watching this. Thank you very, very much again. It's a really clever thing what he's done, because it's a brand that I openly admit now I was wrong about. I admit it. I kind of was under this kind of ignorant, I mean, actually thinking about it, I feel a bit ashamed. I was listening to the naysayers. There is a snobbery in the watch world, a kind of prevalent view of Tag Heuer, this kind of, almost a Marmite effect, It was based on nothing, because I've never owned a Tag Heuer, so I never even considered them. I never bad-mouthed them. I never said negative things about them. That's not my style. I never considered them. And it's kind of ridiculous. I just kind of fell into that trap of listening to the naysayers. I feel stupid now, because actually this watch, yeah, there are some negatives about it, which we'll get into just in a second, but actually for the money, the quality is pretty outstanding. And they have a few models now, and of course there are lots of Tag Heuers that I really don't like. But there are lots of Rolexes that I really don't like, but I love Rolex, There's a lot of Omegas that I don't like, but there's a lot that I do, and I think that's the same with any brand. I mean, just to dismiss a whole brand, yeah, they have a rather kind of cheesy advertising campaign, and it did put me off. There are certain brand ambassadors for Tag that just kind of completely make me not want to go near one, and I understand that, but actually to write them off and never have experienced one, never having, especially one as terrific as this, I think is ignorant. And I was just as ignorant, and I hold my hands up. I've got to admit it. I was almost in this state of just going along with this preconceived notion without any evidence, without trying it myself, which is very unlike me. And this all came about because of my search for a GMT. It's been going on for about a year. Ever since I got the Rolex GMT Master 2, the ceramic, and I was kind of a little bit disappointed with it. It's a great watch, it just wasn't for me. It didn't click. I must admit, so far this is definitely clicking more, which is a bit bizarre, because It's by no means near the standard of Rolex, of course, but I like it more. You know, it's funny. It's quite an interesting watch, and it's very clever of my friend to pick it, because I got a Steinhardt GMT that was too big, and blah blah blah, and then I kind of got disheartened with the whole GMT thing. I was about to, before my friend bought me this, I was considering the Christopher Ward. I even had some reservations about that, because I think ultimately it's a surrogate for the real thing, which is what I should have got originally, which is the Rolex GMT, the pre-ceramic Pepsi, which I've always wanted. I even considered the Coke version as well. I think that's very cool as well. So ultimately, it begs the question, does this quench the thirst for a GMT? Is this the GMT I've been looking for? And I guess the only way to answer that is to do the review. So without further ado, let's switch perspective and take a closer look at the TAG Heuer Formula 1 GMT. Now this is reference number WAZ211A.BA0875. Now this was released in 2014, right at the end of 2014, and of course it's from the famous TAG Heuer Formula 1 range. So let's have a closer look. Now the first thing you'll notice is this blue and black bezel, or what's become known kind of in watch circles as the Batman bezel. There's no doubt that this watch was heavily influenced by the release of the previous year, in 2013, of the release of the Rolex GMT Master 2, the BLNR, commonly referred to as the Rolex Batman. But however, TAG have done something quite different here. They've taken definite style cues, obviously, but it being a GMT with the blue and black bezel, of course. But what I love is that they've really done their own thing. You can see the Formula 1 DNA in it. It has an Ultivia style case, which is at first glance you don't really notice it, but these beautiful curves. Let's get the dimensions out of the way. The diameter is 41 millimeters. We have a thickness of 11 millimeters, so nice and thin, and from lug to lug we're looking at 44. Lug width is an unusual 19 millimeters. So even though it's a 41 millimeter in diameter, it actually wears a lot smaller, and that's because of these lugs. The lugs don't really, if you look at it profile, the lugs don't actually stick out that far, so it wears a lot smaller. In fact, it wears smaller than my Rolex Submariner, which is a 40mm diameter watch. So that's really cool, because it's one thing that kind of puts me off anything above 40mm, is I'm worried it's going to look too big. But this one really wears like a smaller watch. So we have this blue and black bezel with corresponding color scheme matched with the GMT hand. The first thing you notice about this piece is the dial, the detail on the dial. We have these beautiful, sorry, let me just wipe the dust off. We have these beautiful applied markers that really play with the light. In between we have the Lume. The hands are these kind of quite boxy, almost like a sword hand, but with the end kind of nipped off and just made a little bit more modern. The GMT hand in that lovely blue to match the bezel, obviously. And the second hand, if you can just see that, it's the tip of it is blue as well. So subtle but very nicely done. Then we have the contemporary TAG logo as a kind of balance on the second hand. And also we see the logo again signed on the crown. It comes on this completely brushed bracelet. The actual links are pretty good themselves because they're brushed. It tends to have a more kind of sporty look. The clasp, however, is just a fold over, push down with a little fold over bit there. It leaves a lot to be desired, I must admit. And what's more, we actually have a diver extension, which kind of baffles me, because this is from the Formula One range, right? Which Formula One, obviously racing, right? So what is a dive extension doing on a Formula One themed watch? It's a little bit bizarre to me. The racing theme, if we look at the back, the racing theme is continued with the Czech patterned racing flag engraved beautifully on the back. It is done very, very nicely. The links, I wouldn't say are hollow, and I wouldn't say they're full links either. There is a little bit of kind of space in there, but they are quite solid where they attach to the actual case. So it's a kind of semi-hollow end links, if that makes any sense. The case itself is something that having never had a tag before, was something I immediately picked up on. The quality of the case, the quality of the finishing is absolutely impeccable. Very nicely done. We have polished on the sides. We have polished on the bezel, except for the little grip on the bezel is matted, and then matted on the top. It's very nicely done. However, the bezel, as we're talking about the bezel, it doesn't turn. This is a little bit of a negative. So that's a little bit unfortunate. It would have been nice to track an extra third time zone. So you can only have 2 time zones on this, unfortunately. So, you know, if we compare it to the Rolex GMT, that the bezel does rotate, you can track 3 time zones on that. For me, for my use, I have the GMT on London time, and this is New York time. So that, for me, it works absolutely fine. The crown is this quite unusual crown, and I must admit, at first I thought, God, what is that? But actually, in operation, it's really, really nice. And it's something that, if you've seen the unboxing video, it's something that hit me straight away. The action to this watch, when you wind it, it's like butter. It's honestly, it's really impressive. It's smooth as butter, changing the time, changing the date. It does have a luxurious feel to it, which I must admit I've only seen in quite high-end watches. So while we're on the subject of the crown and its really smooth action, we might as well mention the movement. Now, Tag call this their Caliber 7, but actually what it is, it's an ETA, an ETA 2893-2, and it must be the higher version of it, because what they've done is they've added their own rotor and they've modified it. But whatever they've done a sterling job, because I've known this movement in other watches, and it's never felt as refined and as well crafted as it is in here. Also, the accuracy of this thing is extremely impressive. It's outperforming a lot of my other ETA pieces for around about the same money. So it's Tag, whatever they've done, and I know certain critics of the brand have said, oh, that all they've done is just bunged an ETA and put a Tag rotor on it. But actually, I think it's quite obvious they've done a lot more work to the movement, because the way it behaves, I know this movement very well, and the way this behaves is quite different. It's quite a step up. The smooth butter-like operation, the accuracy of it is very, very impressive. So we have a 42-hour power reserve. We have the date at 3 o'clock, beautifully framed. We have a very nice, let me just get the pen so I can show you as we're talking. So running around the outside of the dial, we have a seconds track, which is nicely clear, visible, a matte black dial, and right at the top, I'm not sure if you can see this, but there's a tiny little blue arrow. It's a nice touch at the 12 o'clock. Just look at these beautiful applied indices, and look how the 12 and the 6, they are also have Lume, and we'll switch to a Lume shot in just a moment. Swiss made at the bottom, of course. And I like this font. It's a very kind of modern font. It's all in keeping with its modern design. Now, I'm not sure why the bezel has a grip to it, because you can't turn it, but it keeps that kind of mechanical, I guess, Formula One theme going. Maybe I wonder what it would have looked like if it had been smooth. Also, this cog theme is continued with the crown, and I must say it's grown on me. At first I really didn't like the look of this crown, but actually in operation it's very practical and easy to operate, and I think at the end of the day that's what it's all about. So let's quickly switch to a Lume shot so we can see this in action. Okay guys, here we are having a look at the Lume shot, and as you can see it's really nice and bright, easy to read with those beautiful 12 and 6 markers, and you could just see the balance of the second hand. It's about to approach the minute hand right now, as you can see. A really nice little touch, that skeletonized logo. Anyway, the GMT hand is currently coming up to 11 o'clock on the main dial. You can easily distinguish it from the other hands because of its triangle shape. So very easy to read, and I just love the 12 and 6. I mean, it's such a nice touch. I don't have any watches that have numerals loomed up, so really something different to add to my collection. Just over the moon with it. It's nice and responsive. It holds its charge. I tend to wear a watch while I sleep. I know it's a little bit bizarre, but you know, that's how obsessed I am with the watches. And when I check the time in the middle of the night, it's the easiest watch in the world to read, because you can tell where the 12 o'clock obviously is, and you can tell where the 6 o'clock obviously is. So it's just a pleasure to read. And bear in mind that these Lume markings are quite thin and small, so the superluminova they use is outstanding and really cool addition to my collection. Gonna leave it there. Let's take it back to the studio. So we have a water resistance of 200 meters, which for a GMT, for I guess a racing watch, is really cool. And they've actually added, it kind of makes sense, I guess, to have the diver's extension on the clasp, because you could actually take this diving, which is pretty cool, you know. On the front we have anti-reflective sapphire crystal. Of course it's hackable. We can manually wind it, and like I said, it's very easy to operate. In fact, I would say it's a pleasure to operate this watch. It really is. So let's just quickly have a wrist shot. So here we have the watch on my wrist, and for me it's a perfect fit. Absolutely perfect. I absolutely adore it. It's my scale, my size, and I really love it. I love its modern look. It's something a bit different to everything else I have. GMT hand is very legible, easy to read at a glance. My only critique is the bracelet does not taper at all, so the clasp is actually a little bit big, and this edge here tends to dig in a little bit. But I am going to switch it out for a NATO or possibly even a leather strap for a following video, so stay tuned for that. I'm not the big fan of the clasp. It is of course signed. Everybody said that the modern tags, their bracelets and clasp leave a lot to be desired, and I got to agree. But at this price range, I mean, you can pick these up. Retail I think is about 1,700, and you can pick these up 1,200–1,300 on Amazon. So what you're getting is a lot of watch, and a really high quality Swiss made automatic with a fantastic GMT function, and it performs exceedingly well. The refined craftsmanship of the case, the polishing is impeccably done. I'm very impressed with it. I find it hard to understand why people so easily critique Tag. I think it's more to do with their aggressive advertising campaign. For me, if we're looking at judging the watch for what it is, I think it's an absolute winner. Of course it's not perfect. Let's just summarize the pros and cons. Well, the pros are it's extremely high quality. We got a really reliable, quite a refined version of an ETA in there. The GMT function is fantastic. We got great Lume. It's fun. It's modern. It's its own unique design. I absolutely adore it. Let's look at the negatives. Well, the bezel does not rotate. The bracelet is a little on the flimsy side. Clasp I'm not a fan of whatsoever. I think this is a clasp that you'd see in the 90s, you know. It's a bit outdone, and also there's pins on the links, and I mean, compared to my Squire, the 1545, it's a you know, it's a $400-500 watch, and it has screws in the link, so this is a really a bit of a letdown on the bracelet. However, the watch itself kind of makes up for it. Also, the only last critique is its identity. You know, maybe this should have been in the Aqua Racer range, because it feels more like a dive watch than a kind of racing inspired piece, and perhaps a little bit of that is my own ignorance of the TAG Heuer range. You know, I'm not familiar with their watches, to be honest, and but after having this, they're definitely on my radar now, and I'm quite excited to see what else they bring out. I think this is quite a refined, modern alternative to, you know, if you can't afford 8,000 for the GMT, the BNLR or whatever it is, the Rolex Batman. You know, if you can't afford 8 grand, I think this is a really great way to go. I would class this as a luxury watch. This is kind of entry-level luxury. It's fun, it's modern, it's not trying to copy anybody. At the end of the day, as a watch, it works really, really well, and I guess that's what's the most important thing. So I'm definitely going to keep this. I'm going to enjoy it. I'm not really looking for a GMT anymore. I think this has quenched my thirst for a GMT. This has ticked the box. We'll see in a couple of years how it goes. But anyway, guys, let's take it back to the studio. Okay, welcome back, guys. Now, I hope you enjoyed having a closer look. I have to say, I'm really happy with it. You know, it's a definite keep in my collection. Even though VN said if I didn't like it, I could sell it, he wouldn't be offended. I got to say that, brand snobbery aside and everything, if you appreciate it for what it is, it really is quite something special, and I absolutely adore it. And I got to say, I think I'm not lusting after any other GMT anymore. Whether I'll still feel like this in a year's time, I guess we'll have to see. I'm proud to have this in my collection. I think it's a great GMT that stands on its own. It's not trying to copy anybody. Also with the 12 and 6 and this kind of this really cool Lume, and the actual design of it, it's very much its own thing. It's not a homage. It's not trying to be anything else. It's very much its own thing. Suffers slightly from a kind of genre identity crisis, but it's kind of charming in its own way. And when I'm wearing blue, which is my favorite color, it's absolutely perfect. So I'm really chuffed to bits. Thank you again to VN. So I'm going to leave it there. Thank you very, very much for watching, guys. Please remember to like this video if you enjoyed it and found it useful, and I'll definitely catch you in the next one. Okay, guys. Ciao.